Mahesh Waghdhare is a co-founder of StudioPOD with over 17 years of architectural, urban design and city planning experience in both public and private sector. Mahesh's focus lies in creating uniquely innovative, sustainable and dynamic urban places for people while developing creative collaborations with individuals, local communities, organizations and governments. His work includes a wide range of urban projects dealing with city center redevelopment, large mixed-use urban districts, TODs, universities and institutional campuses, infrastructure, waterfront developments across the globe. Mahesh has been instrumental in leading StudioPod's international practice in the Middle East. He has successfully managed and delivered large-scale master planning projects, including the award-winning Masdar City Phase 2 and Phase 4 detailed master plans, and the Huda Riyadh Island Master Plan in Abu Dhabi. As a principal at StudioPOD, he has led large-scale master plans in Mumbai, Pune, Gurgaon, and the Bangalore metropolitan regions, a futuristic and sustainable village development vision plan for the coastal town of Guhagar, Maharashtra, Sri Jagannath Temple Precinct Plan for the heritage city of Puri, Odisha, among several others. Recently, he successfully led the One Green Miles streetscape project in the heart of Mumbai, along with other placemaking projects in the city. Mahesh has been an urban planning technical expert to the United States Trade and Development Authority to support development of the city of Ajmer, Rajasthan. Mahesh also regularly speaks and presents his work at workshops, seminars, and academic institutions in the USA, UAE, and India. We look forward to your presentation.
First of all, I would like to thank IIA Chennai. Wonderful opportunity to meet everybody over here and all the delegates for patiently waiting through a long day. So it's a bit of a departure. It's amazing to see all the previous presentations, like stalwarts in architecture, talking through all of the different projects, the processes, thinking ideologies itself through the projects. Bit of a departure in a sense that it's what I'm talking about today is a bit more of a large-scale urban design planning practice that we have been working on for the last 9 years based in Mumbai. So I'll take you through some of the projects and some of the journey that we have gone through while working on these. So we are called StudioPOD, People-Oriented Design. What we have been working in since 2013 as a practice. A lot of projects have been in the first few years of master planning scale, and then recently a lot of implementation works have come about. We've done a lot of work in the UAE as well, in Middle East, and also some collaborations that we have started off in the US recently. So just at the end of last year, we just kind of try to see how much work has been happening within the office. It's quite good to see a kind of diverse kind of projects that we are working on, from strategic planning to transport planning to landscape urbanism, which we call. A lot of toolkits and feasibility studies and some of the initiatives that we've been working on as well. So just to give a small story of us, StudioPOD basically was founded by myself, Mansi and Sarfraz. We all are architects, did from different universities in Mumbai. And then we all went for a master's to the US and did urban design from various universities in the US. And when we had that journey, I was there in almost 7 years in Boston. And when I came back in 2013, we all kind of came together to see what we can do to really be in the space of what we actually studied outside, worked outside, and come back and see how we can make a difference on ground in India, especially in planning and urban design. On the way we met Rahul, who's our transport head now, and he also has a similar kind of a passion that we kind of work through. And over a period of last 9 years, we have grown into a 30-odd firm from different kind of, backgrounds, personalities, different universities all over in India as well as from Europe and in the US. We also have a happiness kind of consultant, little Simba, the dog on the right-hand side corner top. But the idea is everybody has a flair of a personality which comes back, and we do spend a lot of time together working on different things. We do believe a lot of us actually cycle to work and come back, try to use public transit as much as possible. So the idea of what we are trying to do and impact for design and planning outside, how do you really look at it together? But we do have our own fun on the way. So at the end of it, it's a people-first approach as an outcome that we always talk about, which obviously different disciplines that we work with, and finding urban design always in those different disciplines, and see how it kind of comes back within our work in the cities that we work in. So when we started off, though, our journey was quite different, right? We did obviously architecture as a background, but when we started to formulate StudioPOD together, all these questions were coming from different people because it was a very young practice. A lot of us are still kind of coming together right now. But how do you see looking at planning and urban design, which is a very large scale thing, and a lot of young architects are there today, a lot of college going students as well. These kind of things also come in the back of the mind when we are working on and trying to start something new. So a lot of people had doubts that we might lose our focus, and instead of doing planning, we have to do a lot of groundwork with architecture and interiors and everything, which is all great, but our focus was always trying to do something at a large scale. There was Mansi with us, a lot of pressure. She was not married then at that time. Shaadi ki umar ho gayi hai, you'll get married, you'll stop before you even start. That's what everybody was telling her. But she pursued further, and it's how you look at things when we get going, right? And the idea of planning and urban design was like a lot of well-established names there, obviously. But the point is, everybody has a perspective, and how do you influence it as a young startup practice? When we started this 9 years ago, urban planning obviously has been quite rooted in India historically. But of late, a lot of things that the way the cities that are being developed right now throughout, there's a lot of scope and potential. And how do you see that happening? And obviously, we did not have any. We all individually had a lot of kind of work projects that we worked on in different places throughout. But as a firm, when we started off, you always need credentials, credibility to start with. So, how do you do something without a portfolio, right? So, we kind of had these noises in the background as a young startup practice. How do you kind of get over those and just put your head down and get going and see what you can do, right? So, fortunately, in the very beginning of our practice, we had this amazing client in the Gurgaon region who was a developer, who were looking at a 20-acre site, which was sitting in a larger kind of a master plan of a 1,000-acre open space network in Gurgaon Manesar area. And he was like, I want to develop this whole thing as a vision. And what all can we do? We can put a golf course here, we can do this, we can do that. We need these things to be done. And we were all excited that, oh wow, the first project we get is like a big master plan. Whatever we have learned up till now, we can try and look at it and see what we can do. We said like, okay, we can get this done immediately, right? We can get going, we can work on this project. We immediately went to the drawing board, did this quick 6 options. He was eager to see something. And the next day when we went, this guy, he was like, these ideas are very Western. It won't fit the bill. You don't know what will work in India yet. So lessons learned, we really thought we need to go back to decipher what does that Indianness mean. We need to go back to our roots, our process of how we develop any particular design or plan, and use kind of very innovative ways of communicating those ideas, especially at a large scale, and see how we can do that. And this quest for relevant Indian solutions, we really love this product by Vikram Panchal from NID. It's a very Indian problem, requires a very Indian solution, not automation, not robotics, right? We have very, very simple issues that we need to deal with. At the same time, they're very complex. So how do you come up with solutions which are very, very relevant for our country, for India, for our places, villages, towns, cities? So we kind of went back to understanding what we have gone through all this while and really kind of come up with these kind of planning mantras, what we call planning for resiliency at a large scale, really looking at context. We've been talking about it quite a bit today in the conference, but really responding at that scale very contextually, whatever scale we're working on. Transportation, connecting efficiently at a large scale as well, what does that mean? Intelligent infrastructure, when I say it's all about what is there in the present and how do you look at the infrastructure which is being developed all across towns and cities in the country. But all of this at a very human scale, very people-centric approach, right? Like everybody, when we plan and design, you have to really look at the user, which we have to put in the center. investing strategically on large scale projects, but really defining what does that mean and how do you start for those projects. And at the end of it, everything, all our projects have always been a collaboration. In today's day and age, gone are those days when kind of a master architect comes in and draws lines, and we kind of look at projects and churn out those, right? It's all about working really with on-ground people, different disciplines. Architects and designers have to kind of be kept aside in the mind and really work with people as professionals, as people themselves, their personalities, to come up with different expertise and different kind of ideas on the ground. So I'll just walk you through quick stories and relating it with some of the projects. We really like this idea, what we call this story of cascading tanks. On the left-hand side, you see is actually a infrared Google Earth image of Eastern India, Eastern Ghats, basically the southern part of Eastern India. And where we are sitting right now as well, the entire Tamilnadu region has, and all across till Andhra almost, there are almost 300,000, 3 lakh tanks, which are like dating back to 300 BC. From the Chola dynasty, kind of these have been kind of developed over man-made tanks developed over a period of years, which are all connected to a larger ecosystem through all these rivers and streams that go towards the Bay of Bengal. And all of these tanks actually are connected to each other in the larger resource network, because these rivers were not perennial. All the water conservation used to happen in these tanks. They were all linked together. And interestingly, also administratively, 2 or 3 villages used to manage each of these tanks. And that's how decentralized everything was, and everybody was taking care of the water and on ground. And this was a larger system which was working very fine all these years. And somewhere down the line, in different for different kind of reasons, from the British era to the last 4 or 5 centuries, the administrative system changed from decentralized to centralized. A lot of these tanks kind of started being overlooked, and what happened over all these periods in time was there was neglect to those tanks, and those getting blocked. And in recent times, those have been kind of used for development as well. And this is what led in terms of flooding events all throughout. And we know this is happening a lot. And floods in Tamil Nadu in 2015, a huge amount of loss to resources, that's displacement of people. And it was a crazy time how we have ourselves, through the process of development, have actually neglected. And this is just showing as an example in Tamil Nadu, wherein at the same place where it was flooded so much, day zero also came in 2019, right? Which is like hardly any water was there. And it's a very scary reality that the way the development is heading into. And what do you do in this context? Similarly, apart from this one, even in the northern part of the NCR region in India, the groundwater is depleting almost meter every year. This is a NASA image which is showing all the depleting ground resources. We are sending tankers and water to be collected from these, to be supplied to all the housing stock that has been created all around. So there are 2 stark realities which are there, and we need to really look at resources from a point of, at a very basic planning level as well, when we are looking at expansion of urban development throughout. So when we got a chance to work in one of these planning projects in Rajasthan, this is a project which is right on the crisp of the Aravalli hills on the eastern side. So the Great Indian Desert has all of these dry region which comes on one side, and on the other side of the Aravalli we have the rain shadow region on the other side. So how that entire habitat is being kind of transformed. We are working on these 2 interesting villages, Savintri and Gadbhor. The client over here was a Devasthan department who wanted to look at the next 25 years of how the growth of the villages would happen. Interesting collaboration as well. The Devasthan department actually had appointed CRCI Gurmit Rai. She's a conservation architect. And she was very much focused on how the temple area would be really looked at and how that would be developed over a period of time. And this project actually, again, initial times how it went about, Mansi, one of the co-founders, she actually had to really go behind Gurmeet and ask her, because she met Gurmeet in one of the conferences in Delhi, and they really connected well. And like, we really wanted to work with you. If you are working on any urban scale project, can we collaborate? And that's how the work started. And it's an interesting kind of a place to be at. When we're looking at both these towns, villages, we saw the entire hydrology of the whole region, the same connection of the ecosystem from the Aravalis coming down, going to the Gomti Naka and the river on the east side. Looking at the entire hydrology of the place and how the village is kind of located within the entire hydrology in the geological area itself. And looking at the way the water moves on the ground, right? And locating all our kind of identifying land that could be used for future expansion in the city itself, in the village itself, and then coming up with a strategy of really respecting the hydrology of the place, connecting all our open spaces around those so that you don't kind of build in those low-lying areas, looking at transportation and everything else at a larger scale as well, and really identifying the long-term growth, like really infill in those closer to the village areas and expansion on the outside wherever it's happening in a very holistic way, and looking at walkable kind of communities. These villages have been there throughout ages, very, very tightly knit communities. So keeping those in mind, how the economy would behave, because a lot of these villages had the economy shifted from the temple town where the young people who were there were actually going to the cities. And how do you recreate those economies in a way that people want to stay back in the villages and want to kind of look at it from a really future development perspective as well. So that's what the idea was, a very compact kind of mixed-use growth plan. We had a lot of strategies for the economy of the place as well, which we had charted out. And looked at the whole, this is the existing way of the entire layout of how the village and the temple in the center was. And the idea was it's all connecting it with like public spaces like in those low-lying areas, a very, very good bus stand terminal that would come in, and really connecting it in a very, very easy way that you come from outside, you get dropped off at the bus transit, and then you can go walking towards the temple, and really kind of looking at its transportation circulation in a very holistic fashion. So that's what these two villages that we had worked on, and kind of take it through to a larger level CDP, basically looking at a development plan out of which shelf projects would be created, and these were being looked at how they would be taken ahead. From the large scale of that village, we also have been working in the recent times with the private sector as well. This is a project in Pune with all the growth of development going outwards in the outskirts. It's a very kind of a pretty site with all along the river, a bit further, like 200 meters away from the river, the site was there. But you can see a lot of these green ravines which are coming down to the river, which kind of made the entire ecology of the place, looking at the site from a very larger system, even though the site is like 100-acre at one place, looking at the entire connectivity of the ravine system, how it comes together. And really, again, ideating with the clients to look at a very, very different kind of a landscape network that could be created, respecting the hydrology of the place, respecting all the natural ravine systems on site, and then come with a plan which is not a traditional kind of a open space in the center, kind of a public space, but like really respecting the ecology of the place and creating something which is everybody around can just walk around to the school or cycle to the school in the entire township, and creating in a public space which was at the heart of the entire township, and with a very natural look on one side, which is the ravine, existing ravine being updated, and the other one being a much more sports-centric open space. So at the same time, looking at the water strategy, how the sustainable kind of way of looking at it from the stormwater management as well as the wastewater management on site as well. So all of these integrated systems holistically kind of had to be looked at a master planning level. And we basically worked through at a landscape level, at a transport level, at the master plan level, and came up with these detailed guidelines for each of these sectors that were carved out, wherein the architects then came in and kind of worked with those guidelines with us to come up with the architecture of the place itself. So one important thing again in this, like, we had a very important step that we did was engaged a biodiversity expert who did a full analysis of all the trees on site, all the different species, flora, fauna, whatever was happening, and so that we can come up with the entire landscape palette, which was very close to the native species and respect to what was there on site itself. And that became the template for how the landscape would shape up, and that's what we were looking at as guidelines as well. So these are some of the images, vignettes which we made to kind of have that vision for the place itself, having a very low impact landscape strategy at a master plan level with these canopy walks and a machan, which will really look at the entire landscape all around, and the build form in the background, just a backdrop. But the main hero of the place was this landscape, which was very much natural and rustic in look itself. So these ideation when we did, and we at that point in time, 5-6 years down in our practice, we thought we really wanted to take these ideas through, and the developer Godrej in this place took a chance with us. We really told them, let us execute what we're trying to say here. When we are doing all these large-scale master plans, what does it really take to kind of implement this kind of a system? Because it has to have all the integrated approaches with water, all the edge conditions with the buildings, that they should not be kind of over empowering the landscape. People should be easily able to go from the public to a private part of the township, and really have a very public open space within the master plan, which was a great thing itself. And initially started off with the master plan, and the marketing team also came in. It was the first time working for us with the developer sector as well. They were asking us, like, what is the USP, what is the main selling point, which we'll tell our clients, right? So they're like, can we have some kind of a 7 wonders of the world theme or whatnot? But we told them, you really have something on the site which is really amazing. The public space that can be created out of this place is something truly unique. And believe it or not, the Godrej actually went ahead and said, okay, if you guys think that's the case, we actually will build the open space first, which is not normally the case. All the developers go in and build the buildings first, and the landscape is like the secondary nature. But in this plan, at a large scale, we were actually able to implement 10 acres of big sustaining forest as a landscape up front, and then which as a selling point later on as well, how it could be developed, the new buildings coming in. You saw the kind of potential which was there, and we were actually able to use this as a device to kind of bring in more people to this site as well. And recently, in the last 2-3 years, throughout the COVID, we actually built the entire landscape. We collaborated with the landscape architect, Bhakti Thakur from Enviroscape, and we really worked together with her and came up with this whole ravine system and canopy walks, which is like really amazing how everything has been built in the last 3 years. And people really enjoy coming to the entire machan. Even people who are not coming to buy anything over there, they just come here and chill and use the public space, the ravine, the machan, the canopy walks going across, and starting to become like a public space where everybody can just come in throughout the year. And post monsoon and during monsoon, this is like fully. These pictures are a little bit pre-monsoons, so right now it's much more lush and green. But it's a very attractive kind of public space that was able to create within a private sector when we worked on these. Moving ahead, talking about a different kind of an idea. When we talk about connecting efficiently, we again kept on going back to the basics and roots, right? Like this is an image from Chandni Chowk in 1840s. If you see, Chandni Chowk at that time had all the different modes of users, right? The Hathi Ghoda Palki that we say, being there, because this was a way of commuting throughout. But when we equate it with the current modes of transport, it means you have to use different users who are there using different kind of transport. All of them have to be equally thought about and completely thought about. But what we are doing everywhere is really going in a way throughout the oil economy and the car industry. It's like really looking at vehicular way of moving things, which is not going to be sufficient from a large-scale infrastructure perspective and traffic planning perspective. The more and more of these we keep on building, the cars will come in more, and the more congestion will happen, because we'll never be able to satiate the need for these kind of moving people, right? So the idea is not about moving cars or transportation vehicles, it's about moving people. That's the idea that we need to imbibe in planning. And that means you have to invest rightly in the metros, in buses, and in transit, last mile connectivity through different kind of IPT modes, cycling as one of the things which is being really promoted throughout the country right now. Something which we need to really look at holistically at a vision level. We need to change the approach to come up with this entire idea. Some of the projects, couple of them I'll show you. These are actually very interesting projects from transportation perspective, which have led to urban design in a different way for us. These are tactical urbanism trials. The client here again is a very interesting one. It's Save Life Foundation. So Save Life Foundation actually, true to the name, that's what they're trying to do. The founder of Save Life actually had a very close relative, cousin, who actually passed away due to a death on one of the highways near Delhi. And his entire mission is how do you save lives on the roads, on the streets of our cities, on our highways as well. And they've been doing very actively, working throughout with different government agencies throughout the country. And this was 2 years back when we spoke with them. This was a project, a series of intersections on the Mumbai-Pune highway, which they had adopted. Obviously, there's a lot of track record of how do you make these highways safer and reduce accidents on these. So what we did was we actually collaborated with them on this project and looked at 3 of these intersections to begin with. First of them was this Karla Fata on one of the highways. There were around, in 2 years' time, 18 accidents identified of fatalities, of 17 out of them, which is quite a high rate with accidents, and 23 injured through multiple things. So really going through an exercise of 3 months, looking on ground what's happening, and creating up a whole kind of a process for that. So the first month was going through, doing a lot of surveys, interviews, traffic analysis, and doing a full pre-concept design of what needed to be done on these intersections. The next 1 month was actually testing what we were saying as a trial for this transportation moves that we were looking at. And then the next 1 month was really documenting the entire post-trial and seeing what impact has been created after the trial that we did. And these trials were basically done with very, very simple paints and barricades, traffic cones, measurements. And the final recommendation was, once seeing the success of the trial, a final civil design of the entire intersection was given to the authorities for further implementation. So this was the intersection. What was happening really was the top and the lower part, if you see the smallest jog of a street going down, were 2 different villages going with the Mumbai-Pune highway crossing it without any signalized intersection, high-speed traffic, low visibility at night time, and how does that kind of impact with all these people traversing through it. So what we did really was really very simple little jog in the geometry and really creating very, very impactful signages before itself when people come down to slow down the traffic. And looking at the entire intersection and creating this the traffic calming exercise, which actually brought down the speeds on this particular highway, because there were these 2 villages and you needed a crossing there, which was there just as a strip mark. We were actually able to reduce the speeds from 40 to 26 kilometers per hour, which is a great kind of drop, especially with the fatalities when you see on the ground how they happen. So it's documenting all of these different speeds, how it happened, the way it kind of impacted the entire crossing. People were actually able to cross at the right place. The cars, trucks were stopping at the right places because of all the signages. And that really helped as a way of working with Save Life Foundation. We took that approach and we've been multiplying it since the last 2 years in several other intersections. In Pune, we successfully did 2 more after those 3 on the highway. In Nagpur, we are doing a couple of them. In Delhi, recently, we started 2 more intersections. So the idea is you look at this as a trial to be taken up to really impact on-ground reality and see how we can change our habitual behavior of moving around through the vehicles. And this brings us to another very interesting project. We've been tinkering with the idea of using all these points of traffic planning, streets, and looking at a very holistic approach of complete streets. This is a project very dear to our hearts, One Green Mile, in the heart of the financial district of Mumbai. Very interestingly, it's not a public project. It's actually a CSR project by Nucleus Office Parks, who owned a couple of these corporate buildings in Mumbai. And they wanted to really look at the outdoors of the offices, how we can uplift them. And when we actually visited the place, we walked around the entire stretch of the kilometer and a half, and we said that it really need to be relooked at a traffic perspective and at an infrastructure perspective before actually going and doing anything just for beautification purpose, because streets have a lot more complexity of on our streets. How do we look at it? And this was a very truly public-private collaboration with an MOU signed with the authorities themselves, and the CSR actually getting a very good design expertise along with us, a lot of engineering experts from MEP, structural, lighting, all kinds of experts on board. We also had a public art expert who came on board later on. I had for a very small stretch of an underflower area, we actually collaborated with an international firm, MBRDV, to look at a very specific area of 100 meters and work through it, the whole end. We kept the whole urban design piece to kind of center around the entire design and planning. So over a period of a year and a half, we went through this whole exercise looking at really equitable distribution of the entire street itself, pedestrian-friendly intersections, wayfinding signage, promoting non-motorized mobility options, placemaking in a very, very fun way, and at the same time really looking at a people-centric approach, and also celebrating the local context and art and culture itself. So that's the context. It's a 1.6 kilometers stretch. The orange buildings are the two corporate buildings which the client owned. And there's a major east-west corridor intersection which was going on one side, which traverses through the city. And the site also is very close to two very important commuter rail stations. So it's a dense neighborhood with this arterial flyovers, which we all love to build in our cities. Just traversing these neighborhoods with vehicular corridors, and hardly any space for people to walk and move around. This was the existing condition, a lot of challenges, pedestrian vehicle conflicts happening everywhere, chaotic cities, a lot of extra space was being used for tempo lobbies to be parking and unsafe pedestrian movements. The idea of a lot of our streets is we have this minimum footpath width, which somebody had kind of whipped up in one of the guidelines of 1.8 meters that was throughout in the whole city, taken up as a guideline, and everything else was given for carriageway and for vehicular traffic. But that leads to actually people in a dense environment like this using these spaces cannot even walk on the footpath in a very dilapidated condition. The bigger the carriageway, the more buses and more cars come and park and just while away over there. Even though there's a big parking garage, MCGM parking garage right next to it. So how do you kind of look at all of these and see, and it was a big challenge for us when we started off this project, and everybody was asking, what will you do here? There's no space on the streets. What will you do in this kind of dense environment and try and create any kind of street environment which is better, right? So what we did was, in the last couple of years' time, a very time-bound exercise. Again, a lot of analysis and design went through. It was not a beautification-only exercise. A lot of transportation exercises was done, modeling was done, looking at the entire vehicular movement, traffic, pedestrian counts. And we did a lot of trials working with the traffic department and the authorities over there to see how we can reclaim some space in order to channelize all the traffic in the right way. And the final implementation was followed after that. So what we essentially did was a lot of these, as I said before, minimum footpath widths were there and a lot of extra carriageway space was there. We really streamlined the entire vehicular movement because a lot of bottlenecking happens when the carriageways keep on going up and down throughout the length, right? And the intersections kind of impacted with the slowness of the traffic kind of halting everywhere. So what we did was we reclaimed the entire carriageway space from like 12 meters to 9.5 of 3 meters of lane continuously going as a contiguous vehicular thoroughfare. Which gave us idea of, like, once you reclaim that kind of space, you streamline the vehicular movement, look at the intersections from different perspectives, then use that extra space for kind of pedestrian movement, for safer kind of landscape, even actually the pilot cycle track, and we're working with the local ward over there to use it as a larger network, and with the whole NMT infrastructure coming in place. and looking at a really complete street and equal street approach in the heart of the city, and how we can actually implement that from various perspectives and points. The tactical trials were pretty fascinating. When the first day, this particular intersection had actually 7 to 8 lanes of traffic kind of really coming and resting there before the 3-minute signal cycle was flushing the traffic out. But this signal was actually, even though it was a 3-minute cycle, the traffic used to be staying for almost 20-25 minutes at one place, not moving ahead, because all the bottlenecking was happening ahead. So counterintuitively, we actually told them, instead of having larger space, you reduce the space. So whatever traffic is coming in 2-3 lanes ahead, will actually move faster when they are going at the intersection, and it won't take up the whole space. So I'll just quickly go through some of the before afters. This was a space which was a very vehicular dominated street, to the current condition now. It's entirely transformed the whole area, where a lot of parking used to happen, a lot of traffic congestion used to happen, footpath space, lighting, a very well lit space, landscape, a cycle track as well. Public art was part of the larger kind of narrative, how we brought that in. Again, some of the before afters, encroached parking spaces turned over into kind of a really organized kind of vehicular movements, a cycle track in place, signages, people-friendly street from where, but still the smaller wins in that. The narrow footpaths have been much more widened now. This is a underflyover, underutilized space which was there, which we actually went in and really looked at different kind of rooms within the entire space, and you made it a very, very public kind of friendly neighborhood public space itself. The idea of a Vachanalaya, which is very local to Mumbai. Vachanalaya is a reading room within in the city of Mumbai, where we have very, very small houses. We don't have space in our houses to kind of study. A lot of the people actually study, a lot of kids study below a street lamp. So in that place, we actually were able to create something which was a Vachanalaya. Kids in the final exams actually were coming in March and using the entire space, because it was a very well lit kind of entire public space. A lot of space for the kids, play areas which was there, transforming this entire thing. In the public, art was curated in a way that it was very, very local story to be told. The entire idea of transformation from a lot of these mill lands which were there in the vicinity, now are corporate offices. So the entire story of Mumbai was told in these witness of public art. The local flower markets and everything. It's very, very deeply curated artwork that we had done. And this is like a totally owned up people space right now. Everybody in the neighborhood just comes in the evening, and in different times of the day, from the office goers in the afternoon time, evening time, people throughout the neighborhood come in and use the entire area, which is quite heartening to see. Bus stops, which were like all backed up with these backings, and we made it a modular open bus stops with simple signages, walking area and resting from both sides as well. There was a lot of apprehension to put benches from everybody, from the traffic police to the people whom we're working with as well. But when we actually put those benches in, people from different backgrounds were using it. It was quite good to see. And at the end of it, the key success was in a 1 kilometer of a stretch, we were able to add 2.3 acres of public realm, which included softscape, hardscape, cycling tracks, everything. Almost half an acre in that one underflyer space which was added, and almost 100 trees which we could plant more new trees throughout the entire stretch. Imagine that 1 kilometer being kind of taking up throughout the 2,000 kilometers of the whole city of Mumbai, and which is the case throughout in most of our towns and cities itself. We are working with the local ward to create a whole network now and coming up with different strategies. So based on this, when we're working with the ward, these are like quick win projects which we did with the ward itself. There was this small little pedestrian alleyway that they wanted to paint. Asian Paints was sponsoring it. So we went in and saw it, and we told them there is a larger linkages of this public pedestrian alleyways linking all your open spaces in the entire area. How do you create a network of those and create a whole idea of those together was the whole point. And looking at the story of the place, the old fort area, the transformed kind of the Bandra Valley Sea Link being the newest kind of additions in recent times, really capturing the essence of the place through public art, through different ways of looking at it. So these are some of these renderings which we showed them how we can do things. Obviously with the budget of MCGM directly, we could not do everything what we were looking at, but really looking at quick wins and identifying kind of good, vibrant public art. The local fishermen folk being very, very close in Varli Koliwada. We actually got the students from the local community come out and paint these things, and with themes we talked about. And these are like recently implemented with these portals also are coming from the worldly motifs that we had for the fort. Another pedestrian street, this was all kind of guarded up with this compound wall, very, very kind of neglected kind of space. Simple thing which we think is a big win for us, compound walls and fences are everywhere on our parks. So we were actually able to convince the MCGM authorities to don't have any wall, just have a katta, which we call is like a seating space, and just have a vibrant kind of a public edge to the entire park. We also opened up a gate on top, which is on the right hand side, the yellow portal. That entire thing was boarded up, nobody knew. A huge community was on the right hand side on the top upper level, and the park was not being accessed at all. So opening up that really brought the entire community to the park in a very simple way, and created these amazing kind of moments of small respite areas, but having a very big impact. The police theme also is an entire police campground, almost like 3,000 families are staying right in the neighborhood, really celebrating the local people over here itself and looking at transformation of public spaces accordingly. And kids have been loving it. Whenever we go to this space, it's full with all kinds of people taking selfies, sitting in the little bench areas along the park. Like small transformations that really made a huge impact throughout. So these are some of these before-after images which everybody is coming in and utilizing space. The best thing is the kind of demographics using it is quite varied, and everybody owns it up, which is the most important thing in these kind of public realm projects, that people have to own up that space to really look after it and make sure that they are sustaining it in the longer run as well. One quick thing, I know we are falling short of time, before I show a couple of videos of those projects. Another kind of collaboration which was also very important, we are working a lot with metro corridors in Mumbai. This is a project which is a non-fare box revenue generation project, looking at different ways of increasing the revenue for the metro corridor apart from the fare box. So how do you deal with those opportunities through land development possibilities with transit-oriented development? This is the only underground metro line which is there in Mumbai, and we looked at one of the sites for the holistic kind of understanding of the entire metro corridor going down, looking at a mixed-use development and really creating a high-quality public space and transit policy for parking as well, which is being implemented right now. When we started this project, this was the GC, the general contractor, was already constructing the metro, and a lot of our ideas were actually being challenged. Another one of this was, there was this metro box which was there in one of the stations, and there was a whole mezzanine of retail which was not visible, and there was a small little sliver of a park on top. So working with the finance consultants, we told the story of urban design from a numbers perspective, saying that if you want to increase the footfall of the retail, you have to create a transit through the retail, going to the station itself, and create this sunken plaza, which basically, and right now is being implemented, not through the whole final design what we were saying, but the idea of the plaza was taken up. Similarly, a lot of public engagement processes and consensus building, different kind of citizens initiative we worked on. One of the ones in the Mumbai Eastern Waterfront, the Portlands of Mumbai, we have been working since the last 6 years of a public outreach process of making people aware of the different kind of possibilities of this land, and again kind of talking with people, doing conferences and making sure that everything is being developed in a very holistic manner. So I'll just quickly go run through some of these initiatives that are all different ways of engaging communities. This is in Vijayawada. We did a whole tree plantation drive with Geeta Mehta. She's one of the professors in Columbia University, looking at SOCs, which is a social credits kind of an idea, where instead of giving money to people, you actually engage them in public activities, giving social credits to them, and making them own up that one kind of initiative. So each of the trees is being actually looked after planting by the villagers themselves, and because they are taking care of those trees, the social credits were given to them. So there are different ways, multiple ways that we've been working and throughout in different places in the country. I will just end with two of these small short videos. If you can just play. there are two videos showing the public realm projects that I talked about before. This is a Worldly project, Worldly Connect. So this is the same project where all of these compound walls were there throughout the park, which is kind of safe and brighter and much more livelier now. The kids just love all the different levels and keep running up and down. Younger crowd can just come in and spend time. So that's one in Worldly which I just showed, and the other one is more interesting. The one Green Mile video. Essentially, those are the ones which a lot of interviews we did post occupancy of different people using it. Just play that one. That's how people have really come in and started using the space and appropriating them in different ways. So lighting also plays a very important role at night time in these. Some of the stuff which we showed before. We also did a lot of interviews with people who have been using the space from the surrounding community. There's this old lady who stays quite close by. She spotted her at various places throughout the entire stretch, kind of really telling people not to park your bike here or not to kind of make sure that the cycle track or the open space we have created just to maintain those. People have done different things because this part of the street is much more kind of a
बाकी ये कैसा लग रहा है आपको? पहले से अभी कैसा लग रहा है?
पहले से तो बहुत अच्छा हो गया।
हाँ।
पहले से तो अच्छा ही होएगा ना अभी।
हाँ, किधर रहने को किधर आप?
अंदर रहते हम लोग।
अरे वाह।
Cyclists have been using this as a promotional kind of a thing as we are trying to increase the network over here. The play areas have been quite well used throughout. In fact, they've been like more than full every time we have gone there. Simple thing like hopscotch and these like very kind of engaging for kids to come and play in.
हाँ बहुत अच्छा लगा।
आपको क्या अच्छा लगा सबसे ज़्यादा?
मेरे को वो अच्छा लगा और ये अच्छा लगा।
ये अच्छा लगा नीचे?
हाँ।
नाइस, गुड।
People have come in the afternoon time, kids playing kabaddi. It's not a planned activity, but something like a flexible space offers and for kids.
कैसा लगा तुमको ये? रोज आओगी खेलने?
It was the month of March where a lot of kids used to come in for the final exams preparation, and they were like full in the entire area, like studying for the exams.
ओके। और क्या पढ़ाई कर रहे हो?
मैं मैथ्स कर रहा हूँ।
आदेशी जागा नव्हती तर इकडे तर यायला बरं वाटतं. मी कुठे
So every day,
लांब
like
राहता राहिला
morning
की जवळ
time, evening time, everybody was coming in and like really
परीक्षेचं time time
using the
केलं
space very well.
तर ऑल द बेस्ट तुम्हाला. थँक्यू.
हेलो।
This is a specific bunch of kids from the neighboring society who come every evening to play board games, Uno and other activities, which is like again something which is like a daily routine which has been set for them now.
Less people come here. Less people come here.
It's lit up. It looks very pretty.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you so much. I hope you guys continue playing Uno here and many other board games.
And now like it's been entirely taken up by the people. There are events which happen. Like this is not programmed at all. People come in and do their own things. It's also a fully open public space. It's not gated at all. You can come in and even at night time just go through it. But because the light quality is so good, it's highly visible. It's being taken care of by the people themselves around it. Like DJ events, video events, everything kind of happens at different times. On Sundays, a lot of events happen here. It's the finally the end of it. The most satisfactory thing is like the smiles on the people, right? Like everybody has really taken it up as their own space now. A lot of these old ladies come in for evening walks and very what she's saying is like a very quiet space to have in the hustle and bustle of the whole city.
वॉक करता करता म्हातारी माणसं आपली येऊन बसू शकतात. वाटलं तर जरा म्हणाला
असं वाटतं बरं वाटतं समाधान वाटतं रात्री पण आली तिथं आम्ही लोक बसलो ऐकत उशीर येत
So in a place where space is highly contested in the cities, especially Mumbai, where you don't have any respite for public space, we have a very high, small quotient of open space per person. These are the spaces that we can actually go in and make a change with these small urban inserts throughout. And there's so many of them. We look around, there always something to do on our streets and in urban spaces itself. Well, it's not entirely perfect. There's a lot of things happening throughout, but it's something which is a good start, and we love that people have taken it up and made it their own. Thank you.